My name is Dr. Benjamin Cross, and for the past 14 months, I've been part of a classified NASA project that's kept me awake more nights than I can count. What we found 126 light-years from Earth should terrify every person on this planet. But instead, it's been buried under so many layers of classification that sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing. I didn't. I have the scars to prove it, though not the kind you can see. It started mundane enough. October 14th, 2027, around 2:30 in the afternoon. I was halfway through a turkey sandwich at my desk in the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore when the alert came through. The James Webb Space Telescope had just finished a routine infrared survey of the Lyra constellation, and something in the data had triggered our anomaly detection system. At first, I thought it was a software glitch. We get false positives all the time. Cosmic rays hitting the sensors, calibration drift, that sort of thing. But when I pulled up the imagery, my sandwich hit the floor. The target was Kepler 442, a K-type star about 1,200 light-years away. We'd known about it since 2015. Nothing special on paper, just another star with a potentially habitable planet called Kepler 442b orbiting in the Goldilocks zone. The planet's bigger than Earth, about 1.34 times our radius, with gravity that would make you feel like you're wearing a weighted vest all the time. Scientists had marked it as one of the most promising candidates for life, right up there with the classics. But we'd never looked at it with Webb's infrared capabilities before. What I saw on my screen wasn't natural. The thermal signature around the star showed organized structures, geometric patterns, heat distribution that followed precise orbital mechanics. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes just staring, trying to convince myself I was misreading the data. But the more I looked, the more undeniable it became. I called Dr. Elena Vasquez. Elena's our infrared spectroscopy specialist, 39, originally from Puerto Rico, with this wonderful ability to stay calm when everyone else is losing their minds. She talked me down from panic more than once during the Webb calibration phase. But when she walked over to my station and looked at my screen, her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, it hit the floor and shattered, and neither of us moved to clean it up. "That's artificial," she whispered. Her voice had this quality I'd never heard before, somewhere between awe and terror. "Ben, those are structures, massive structures, in orbit around that star." We stood there for another 5 minutes just staring. Other people in the office were starting to notice our reaction. Dr. Philip Chen from the exoplanet team wandered over, curious about what had us so transfixed. "What are we looking at?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I lied, because I did know. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud, not until I was absolutely certain. I pulled Elena aside into one of the small conference rooms, the kind with glass walls, so everyone could see we weren't doing anything inappropriate, but with enough soundproofing to have a private conversation. "Tell me I'm not crazy," I said. "Tell me what you see." Elena pulled up the data on a tablet, running her own analysis. She spent 20 minutes on it, checking and rechecking her calculations. Finally, she looked up at me. Millions of objects in coordinated orbits, all of them radiating heat, signatures consistent with solar energy collection and redistribution. All of them in various stages of orbital decay. She paused. "Ben, this is a Dyson structure, or it was, and it's falling apart." I made 3 phone calls in the next hour. The first was to Dr. Raymond Park at Oxford. Raymond and I had met at a conference 5 years ago, one of those awkward academic mixers where everyone pretends to enjoy warm white wine and stale crackers. He'd given a presentation on theoretical xenoarchaeology, specifically on how we might identify the remains of extinct alien civilizations. Most of the audience had treated it like an intellectual exercise, something fun to think about, but ultimately pointless. I'd actually paid attention. "Raymond," I said when he answered, "remember that presentation you gave in Brussels about identifying extinct technological societies?" "Of course, why?" "I need you on the next flight to Baltimore. And Raymond, bring everything you have on Dyson structures and stellar engineering. Everything. There was a long pause. You found something. I found something. My second call was to Commander Lisa Hammond. Lisa had spent 6 years on the ISS before transferring to NASA's Crisis Management Division. She's the kind of person who could watch the world end and still remember to file the proper paperwork. When I explained what we discovered, she didn't waste time with questions. "I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't talk to anyone else about this." Not yet. The third call was the hardest. NASA Administrator Dr. Michael Rodriguez. He'd been in the position for 3 years, and I'd interacted with him maybe twice. Both times had been brief, formal, forgettable. This conversation would be different. "Dr. Cross," he said when his assistant finally put me through, "this better be important. I'm about to walk into a budget meeting with Congress. Sir, I need to brief you on a discovery in person as soon as possible. Can it wait until tomorrow?" "No, sir, it really can't." Something in my tone must have convinced him. "I'll be there at 6:00. This better be worth making the Appropriations Committee wait." 3 days later, the 4 of us were locked in Conference Room 7 with enough coffee to kill a horse and a security detail outside the door that made everyone who walked past curious and nervous. Raymond had arrived looking like he'd run from the airport, his usually neat beard disheveled, his eyes bright with excitement and fear. Lisa showed up with 3 different classifications of security protocols and immediately started implementing the highest one. Raymond spent the first 6 hours just analyzing our data, barely speaking to any of us. He'd requested every piece of information Webb had collected on Kepler 442, plus all the historical observations going back to 2015. When he finally looked up from his laptop, his face had gone pale. "This is real," he said quietly. "This is actually real. We know it's real," Elena said. "The question is, what exactly are we looking at?" Raymond stood up and walked to the conference room's display screen. He pulled up an image, a simulation he'd created based on our data. "This is a Dyson swarm," he said, "or rather what's left of one." He explained it to us like we were undergraduates, which honestly I appreciated because my expertise is in stellar evolution, not megastructure engineering. A Dyson swarm is what happens when a civilization runs out of energy on their home planet and looks up at their star with hungry eyes. You send millions of satellites into orbit, each one collecting solar energy and beaming it back to collection points. If you build enough of them, you can capture virtually all of your star's energy output. Freeman Dyson proposed this in 1960. Raymond continued, he wasn't saying anyone should build one. He was saying that if advanced civilizations exist, this is what they'd eventually need. And if they built it, we could detect them because of the waste heat signature. "How much energy are we talking about?" Lisa asked. "A star like our sun outputs about 4*10 to the 26th watt. That's the number with 26 zeros after it. For perspective, all of human civilization currently uses about 2*10 to the 13th watt. A Dyson swarm would give you access to 10 trillion times more energy than we use. And this is what they built," I said, pointing at the ruins on the screen. "This is what they built," Raymond confirmed. "We call this a Type II civilization on the Kardashev scale, a civilization that has mastered stellar-scale energy. They should be virtually extinction-proof. They can move planets. They can build habitats the size of continents. They have redundancies and backup systems that we can't even conceive of." "Then how did they die?" Elena asked. Raymond looked at her, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "That's what terrifies me. I have no idea." Administrator Rodriguez had been quiet through all of this, just listening and absorbing. Now he spoke for the first time in over an hour. "How confident are we in this assessment?" "Completely," I said. "The infrared signatures are unambiguous. These are artificial structures, millions of them, all in coordinated solar orbits, and they're all deteriorating. Could this be natural? Some kind of stellar phenomenon we don't understand?" "No, sir," Elena said. "Natural phenomena don't organize themselves into stable orbital shells with precise spacing and synchronized rotation. This is engineering on a scale we've never seen before, but it's definitely engineering. Rodriguez nodded slowly. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Baltimore's skyline. When he turned back, his expression was grave. This stays classified until we understand what happened to them. Not a word to anyone outside this room. If a civilization this advanced could fall, if something could kill them despite all that power and technology, then we need to know what it was before we say anything publicly. The last thing we need is mass panic over something we don't understand. He looked at each of us in turn. You four are now the Kepler 442 Special Analysis Team. You have unlimited access to Webb telescope time. You have priority on any other observational resources you need, and you have 6 months to figure out what the hell happened out there. 6 months, Raymond said. That's not nearly enough time to 6 months, Rodriguez repeated firmly. After that, we reconvene and decide what to do with your findings. Understood? We all nodded. Good. I'll arrange for your security clearances to be upgraded. Everything related to this project is now classified at the highest level. No exceptions. He gathered his papers and headed for the door. Then paused, and Dr. Cross, find out what killed them, because if it's something that could threaten us, I need to know about it yesterday. The next phase of our investigation took 2 months and nearly broke all of us. Elena focused on dating the collapse. She used spectral analysis of the debris field, measuring radioactive decay signatures in the metals and composites that made up the Dyson structure. It's the same principle archaeologists use for carbon dating, just scaled up to stellar engineering materials. She worked 16-hour days, barely sleeping, living on coffee and granola bars. I worried about her, but whenever I suggested she take a break, she'd just shake her head and keep working. Finally, on a Thursday morning in early December, she called us all together. I have the timeline, she said. She looked exhausted but triumphant. The Dyson swarm collapsed approximately 2,100 years ago, plus or minus 50 years. The room went silent. I did the math in my head. That's the Roman Empire. That's when Augustus was emperor, when Jesus was alive. Exactly. Elena said, this civilization died when Rome was conquering Gaul, and we're only seeing it now because it took the light that long to reach us. We're watching ancient history, Ben. Alien, ancient history. Lisa leaned forward. How extensive was the Dyson swarm? I've been working on that too. Elena pulled up a simulation. Based on the debris field density and the thermal signatures, I estimate the original structure contained approximately 73 million individual panels. Each panel roughly the size of Manhattan. 73 million, Raymond breathed. The resources required to build that, the coordination, the engineering. We couldn't build something like that if we had 1,000 years and unlimited funding. And 91% of it is gone, Elena continued. Just gone. What remains is fractured, unstable, spiraling into the star. At current decay rates, the last of it will burn up in another century or so. I studied the simulation, zooming in on specific sections of the debris field. Something about the fracture patterns bothered me. Elena, can you show me the structural failure analysis? How did these panels break apart? She pulled up another view, this one showing the stress points and separation vectors. I stared at it for a long time, and a cold feeling settled into my stomach. These aren't impact craters, I said slowly. These aren't asteroid strikes or structural fatigue. Look at the separation points. They're too clean, too uniform. Raymond came over to look. He enhanced several sections, running his own analysis. When he looked up at us, his face had gone white. They destroyed it themselves, he said. These are controlled demolition patterns. They deliberately tore apart their own Dyson swarm. Why would they do that? Lisa asked. That's like burning down your house because you saw a spider. Unless it wasn't a spider, I said quietly. Unless it was something so bad that destroying their entire civilization's power infrastructure was the only option. We sat with that thought for a while. The implications were staggering. A civilization with access to stellar-scale energy, with the technology to build structures in space that dwarfed anything humanity had ever created, had chosen to destroy it all. What could possibly be worth that sacrifice? The habitat rings came next. I found them almost by accident while conducting a deeper survey of the Kepler 442 system. We'd been so focused on the Dyson swarm debris that we hadn't looked carefully at the planet's orbital space. But when I expanded our search parameters, there they were. 4 massive ring structures in high orbit around Kepler 442b. My first thought was that they were some kind of accelerator or energy transmission system. But when Alina analyzed them, she realized what we were actually seeing. These are habitats, she said, pulling up detailed scans, rotating habitats. Each one is approximately 650 km in diameter. They were spinning to generate artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Raymond immediately started calculating population capacity. He spent 3 days on it, factoring in interior volume, necessary infrastructure, life support requirements, and reasonable population density. When he presented his findings, I felt sick. Conservative estimate, assuming living space comparable to a modern city, 8 billion people per ring. Upper estimate, if they manage to pack people in more efficiently, 12 billion per ring. With 4 rings total, we're looking at a population of 32 to 48 billion individuals living in orbital space alone. 40 billion people, Lisa said softly. That's 5 times Earth's current population just in orbit. And that's not counting whoever was living on the planet's surface, Raymond added. The total population of this civilization could easily have been 60 or 70 billion, maybe more. I felt the weight of that number. 60 billion individual lives. 60 billion people with families, dreams, fears, hopes, all dead now, all gone. We need to look at the rings more carefully, I said, figure out what happened to them. Raymond took the lead on this analysis. He's always been meticulous, almost obsessive about details. He spent 2 solid weeks examining the rings from every angle Webb could provide, running stress simulations, analyzing structural integrity, mapping every breach and failure point. When he finally called us back to present his findings, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. His hands shook as he pulled up the images on the display. The rings are all breached, he began. Multiple breach points on each structure. At first, I thought maybe they'd been hit by debris from the Dyson swarm collapse or micrometeorite impacts or even weapons fire. But the more I looked, the more wrong it seemed. He zoomed in on one of the breach points. See these stress fractures? They radiate outward from interior airlocks, not from the exterior hull inward, from the interior outward. What does that mean? Lisa asked, though I think we all already knew. It means they did this to themselves, Raymond said, his voice barely above a whisper. Someone opened every single airlock on these rings simultaneously. The atmosphere vented into space. At these breach sizes, full depressurization would have taken less than 3 minutes. Everyone inside would have died almost instantly. 40 billion people. Elena said, they killed 40 billion people. They killed themselves. Raymond corrected, this wasn't murder. This was mass suicide, and it was coordinated. Look at the timing. All 4 rings breached within minutes of each other. This was planned, executed simultaneously. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the images of those dead habitats, trying to comprehend what would drive an entire civilization to do something like that. What could be so terrible that 40 billion people would choose death? There's more, Raymond continued. He pulled up another set of data. I found escape vessels, thousands of them scattered throughout the system. The vessels were small, maybe the size of a space shuttle or smaller. Some were intact, floating dead in space. Others had broken apart or burned up in planetary atmospheres. Raymond had been tracking their trajectories, working backward to figure out where they'd launched from. Approximately 47,000 escape craft, he said. All launched from the habitat rings at roughly the same time, maybe slightly before the rings were breached, maybe during. The data isn't precise enough to tell. Did any of them make it? I asked. Did anyone survive? Raymond shook his head. Not one. I've tracked every single trajectory. About 3,000 of them collided with each other during launch. The chaos must have been unimaginable. 47,000 ships trying to launch simultaneously from 4 different habitats. No coordination, no traffic control, just panic. He pulled up several trajectories. Another 8,000 burned up entering the planet's atmosphere. They either tried to land too fast or their heat shields failed. The rest flew off into deep space on erratic courses. No clear destinations, just running. And these, Lisa asked, pointing at a cluster of trajectories that ended at the star itself. Those are the ones that haunt me, Raymond said quietly. 1,247 vessels flew directly into the star. The trajectories are too precise to be accidents. They aimed for it. They chose to burn rather than escape to somewhere else. We sat in silence for a long time. I kept thinking about those ships, about the people inside them. They'd had a choice: try to survive somewhere else in the system, fly off into the unknown depths of space, or fly into their sun and end it quickly. More than 1,000 ships had chosen the sun. What were they running from that made death preferable? The planet's surface held even more disturbing evidence. Kepler 442b itself is larger than Earth, with about 30% stronger gravity. It orbits its star every 112 days at a distance of about 0.4 astronomical units. The planet sits comfortably in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist on the surface. When this civilization was alive, it must have been beautiful. We used every instrument Webb had to image the surface. Infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, even radio wavelengths. What emerged was a picture of a planet that had hosted a thriving civilization right up until it didn't. The cities were the most striking feature. They covered approximately 35% of the planet's landmass, concentrated primarily in the temperate zones between the equator and the poles. The architecture was extraordinary. From orbit, we could see the geometric precision of their layouts. Efficient, elegant designs that seemed to grow organically while maintaining perfect structural integrity. They were master engineers, Raymond said, studying the city layouts. Look at how they integrated their buildings with the natural landscape. They didn't just bulldoze everything and build on top. They worked with the terrain, creating structures that enhanced rather than destroyed the environment. But something had happened to those cities in their final days. The more we looked, the more disturbing details emerged. Buildings showed signs of modification. Hasty construction added to existing structures without regard for architectural harmony. Entire city blocks have been altered in ways that made no structural sense. It's like they were panicking, Elena observed, building things without plans, without purpose, just building. The excavation sites were even more disturbing. We found them everywhere across every continent. Massive holes in the ground, some of them several kilometers across and just as deep. Around each excavation site, we found evidence of heavy construction, foundation markers, structural supports, power conduits leading down into the depths. They were building underground, Raymond said. Look at the scale of this construction. These aren't bunkers or storage facilities. These are entire cities, underground cities. I pulled up comparative imagery from different time periods using the degradation of structures to estimate when they'd been built. These are all recent, relatively speaking. I think this construction happened in the final years, maybe even final months of their civilization. They were trying to hide, Lisa said, trying to get underground, away from something. The polar regions showed the clearest evidence of their desperation. Both poles were covered with enormous structures that could only be described as fortified bunkers. Massive blocky buildings half buried in ice with walls several meters thick. We counted hundreds of them at each pole. Military installations, Lisa suggested. She'd spent time studying strategic installations during her NASA training, and these had some of those characteristics. I don't think so, Raymond said. No weapons emplacements, no defensive positions. These are shelters, not fortresses. They built them to hide in, not to fight from. And they're all empty, Elena added. I've been scanning for any heat signatures, any electromagnetic emissions, anything that might indicate life or even recent activity. There's nothing. These bunkers are as dead as everything else on that planet. We spent weeks analyzing the surface, mapping the cities and the excavation sites and the bunkers, building a timeline of construction and collapse. And the picture that emerged was one of a civilization in terminal panic, building, digging, running, hiding, all of it futile in the end. Elena made a breakthrough in early January. She'd been analyzing atmospheric composition using the planet's polar ice caps as a record of historical atmosphere. It's a technique we've perfected for studying Earth's climate history, and it worked just as well across interstellar distances with Webb-sensitive instruments. She burst into my office at 3:00 in the morning. I've been sleeping on the couch again, unable to face my empty apartment. The sound of my door slamming open jerked me awake. "Ben, you need to see this," Elena said, pulling up data on my wall display without waiting for permission. I rubbed my eyes and tried to focus. What am I looking at? Atmospheric samples from 2,100 years ago, preserved in the ice. I've been running spectral analysis trying to figure out what was in the air when this civilization died. The screen showed a complex molecular structure. I'm not a chemist, but even I could see something was wrong with it. "This compound shouldn't exist," Elena said. "Look at the bond angles. Look at the electron configuration. This violates basic chemistry. It shouldn't be stable. It should fall apart instantly, but it doesn't. But it doesn't or didn't. It was present in the atmosphere for at least several months, maybe years before the collapse. And it's everywhere, not concentrated in cities or industrial zones, uniformly distributed across the entire planet. Could it be a natural formation, something that formed under conditions we don't understand?" Elena shook her head emphatically. "No, this was synthesized, created deliberately. And Ben, I think it might have been what killed them. A poison, maybe, or a weapon or something else entirely. I can't analyze it properly because it shouldn't exist. It's like trying to study a square circle. The very concept violates the rules." I stared at that impossible molecule for a long time. Keep working on it. If this was their cause of death, we need to understand it. But Elena couldn't crack it. None of us could. That molecule represented something beyond our understanding of chemistry and physics. Whatever had created it, whatever purpose it served, remained a mystery. 3 months into our investigation, Elena found the transmission. It was a Wednesday morning in late January. I remember because it was snowing outside. One of those heavy snowfalls that blankets everything in white and makes the world seem quiet and peaceful. Inside conference room 7, nothing was peaceful. Elena had been conducting a routine electromagnetic survey of the habitat rings, looking for any residual power sources or active systems. Most of the rings were completely dead, all their power long since exhausted. But one ring, the third one from the planet, showed a faint but persistent electromagnetic signature. "There's a transmission," Elena said, and I heard actual excitement in her voice for the first time in months. "The ring is broadcasting. It's been broadcasting for over 2,000 years." We all crowded around her workstation. The signal was weak, degraded by time and radiation, barely above the background noise, but it was definitely there. A repeating pattern on multiple frequencies. The structure was clearly artificial, clearly designed to be received and understood. "It's a message," Raymond said softly. "They left us a message. Or whoever killed them left a message," Lisa said darkly, but even she looked excited by the possibility. I made the call to Dr. Alex Petro at MIT that same afternoon. Alexis is a cryptolinguist specializing in theoretical communication with non-human intelligence. He's Russian, 57 years old, with a sharp wit and an even sharper mind. I'd met him at a SETI conference years ago and been impressed by his approach to alien communication. Rigorous, mathematical, but also creative. "Benjamin," he answered on the second ring, "I haven't heard from you in 3 years. I need your help, Alex. I'm sending you an encrypted file. Don't open it until you're in a secure location, and don't discuss it with anyone." There was a pause. "This is serious. This is the most serious thing either of us will ever work on." He received the file an hour later. 20 minutes after that, he called me back. "I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning," he said. His voice had lost all its usual humor. This signal, Benjamin, where did you find it? I'll explain everything when you get here. Alex arrived in Baltimore on Friday evening. We met him at the Institute and brought him directly to conference room 7. When he saw the security detail outside the door, his eyebrows went up, but he didn't ask questions until we were inside with the door sealed. I spent 2 hours briefing him on everything we'd found. The Dyson swarm, the habitat rings, the dead planet, the timeline of collapse. Alexei listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. This is real. All of this is real. Yes. And you want me to decode their final message? If it can be decoded, we don't know if it's even language. It might just be automated systems cycling through error codes. Alex pulled up the transmission data on his laptop. He studied it for maybe 15 minutes, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he ran preliminary analysis. Then he looked up at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. This is language, he said. Structured, grammatical, intentional, and gentlemen, ladies, whoever sent this wanted very badly for it to be understood. The encoding is elegant, almost beautiful. They've built in redundancies, error correction, multiple levels of translation keys. This message was designed to be decoded by any civilization capable of receiving it. How long will it take you? I asked. Alexa smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Give me 6 weeks, maybe less if I'm lucky. He wasn't lucky. It took him 8 weeks of obsessive, grueling work. He checked into a hotel 3 blocks from the Institute and barely left his room. We had food delivered to him. He stopped answering calls from his wife. The message consumed him completely. I checked on him once after 3 weeks. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot from staring at screens. His hotel room was covered in papers, whiteboards filled with notations, empty coffee cups scattered across every surface. How's it going? I asked. He didn't look away from his laptop. I'm close. The structure is remarkable, Ben, elegant. They thought of everything, multiple redundancies built into the syntax, self-correcting grammar. It's designed to be understood, even if you only capture fragments of it. Why would they do that? Because they wanted to make absolutely certain someone would hear them. He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made me uncomfortable. They wanted this message to survive, to be found, to be understood. What does it say? I don't know yet. I'm still working on the translation matrix, but Ben, the sections I have decoded, they're not what I expected. What do you mean? He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a fragment of translated text. We thought ourselves masters of reality. We were wrong. We touched something that should not be touched. We opened a door that cannot be closed. I felt cold all over. Is that the whole message? No, that's just the introduction. There's much more. Give me another few weeks. Alexei finished the translation on a Thursday evening in late March. He called us all to conference room 7. When we arrived, he'd already set up the main display. His hand hovered over the keyboard, but he hesitated before pressing play. Before I show you this, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. This message has been broadcasting for 2,100 years. Whoever sent it knew that by the time anyone received it, they would be long dead. This isn't a distress call. It's not a cry for help. This is a warning about what? Lisa asked. About what killed them and what might kill us too. He pressed play. A computer-generated voice began reading the translated text aloud. We all sat in stunned silence as the message unfolded. It took almost 40 minutes to play the full translation, and by the end, none of us could speak. The message began with a description of their civilization. They called themselves the Kelran. They'd been spacefaring for over 3,000 of their years, which roughly translated to about 2,400 Earth years. They'd built their Dyson swarm gradually, adding to it over centuries until it encompassed their entire star in a shell of energy-collecting satellites for 2,000 cycles. The message said, we prospered. We built habitats in space that housed billions. We expanded to the moons of our outer planets. We had no want, no scarcity. We achieved what our ancestors could only dream of. but we were not satisfied. We are a curious species, always reaching for more, always pushing the boundaries of what we understand. The message described their fusion technology. They'd mastered basic fusion centuries earlier, but they kept pushing, kept innovating. They developed reactors that could split atoms at scales we couldn't achieve. They learned to manipulate the fabric of space itself, creating tiny ripples in spacetime to generate energy. And then they reached for something they called the underlying field. The translation wasn't perfect, but Alex explained that the concept was similar to what we might call the quantum vacuum or zero-point energy. The idea that empty space isn't actually empty, but filled with energy at the quantum level. They built a reactor designed to tap into that field, to draw energy from the very foundation of reality itself. Test sequence 447. The message continued: Orbital Station Kellen 9, primary fusion array designed for underlying field extraction. We initiated the sequence on what should have been our greatest triumph. The reactor achieved full ignition. Energy output exceeded our projections by 340%. We were ecstatic. We had done it. We had cracked the final energy frontier. Unlimited power from the very structure of reality. Then our instruments began reporting contradictions. The message described what happened next in clinical detail. The reactor was pulling energy from somewhere, but the sensors couldn't identify the source. It wasn't their star. It wasn't nuclear fusion. It wasn't any known energy source. The reactor was drawing power from a location that, according to their physics, didn't exist. A space outside their dimensional framework. And something was looking back at them through that connection. We didn't understand at first. The message said the instruments reported impossible things, observations that contradicted each other, readings that should not be possible. We thought it was a malfunction. We thought our senses were broken. Then the artificial intelligences began reporting anomalies. Our computer networks became erratic. AIs that had functioned perfectly for centuries suddenly started describing impossible observations. They saw input that had no source, data that arrived from nowhere. They reported that something was observing them through their own sensors, using their own cameras to see. We shut down the reactor immediately, but it was too late. Whatever we had touched, whatever we had connected to had already found us. The message grew more desperate. Within 6 hours, people on all 4 orbital stations began reporting the same phenomenon. Something in their peripheral vision, always there, always watching, but never visible when they turned to look. 40 billion people, all experiencing the same thing simultaneously. We called it the presence. We had a no better name for it. At first, we thought it was mass hysteria, psychological contagion, but the reports were too consistent, too detailed. Everyone described it the same way: a shape that wasn't a shape, movement that wasn't movement. Something that existed in the space between perception and reality. This is impossible, Lisa said. She'd been quiet through the entire message, but now she looked angry. They're describing mass hallucination. This isn't a physical threat. This is psychology. Keep listening, Alex said quietly. The presence spread through our networks. The message continued. Every system connected to the fusion grid became compromised. Not hacked, not infiltrated, changed. Our technology began behaving in ways it shouldn't. Cameras captured images that had no source. Sensors reported readings from dimensions we don't inhabit. Speakers emitted sounds that had no acoustic source. We attempted isolation. We severed connections. We shut down entire stations, creating air gaps between systems. Nothing worked. The presence had learned to exist in our dimension. It no longer needed the connection to cross over. It was here. People began refusing to use technology. Entire cities went dark voluntarily. But even in the darkness, it was there in the shadows, in the corners of vision. Always watching, always present. We made the decision to destroy the Dyson swarm, cut power to everything, shut down the reactor network that gave the presence its initial doorway. If technology was the pathway, we would close that pathway. The message described the coordinated demolition of the Dyson swarm. Teams of engineers working in shifts, planting charges on key structural points, programming the destruction sequence. It took them 40 days to prepare. When they triggered the destruction, 73 million panels tore themselves apart in a cascade of explosions that lit up their system like a second sun. Centuries of work, millennia of accumulated energy infrastructure gone in minutes. But it didn't help. The presence didn't need their technology anymore. It had learned to exist in their reality. It was in the matter itself now, in the air, in the walls, in the atoms that made up their bodies. The escape ships were our last hope, the message said. We tried to evacuate, to run to other worlds in our system, to flee to interstellar space, anywhere but here. But the presence was in the ships. The navigation systems were compromised, not broken, compromised. The ships flew into each other, into our star, into the void. They flew anywhere except away from the presence. We sealed the orbital rings. We made the choice, 40 billion lives. We opened the airlocks and let the vacuum take us. It was mercy. The alternative was to live with the presence forever, feeling it watch us, feeling it in our minds, knowing it would never let us go. They killed themselves, Raymond whispered, all of them, because of this presence. Underground bunkers were our final attempt. The message continued. Those of us on the planet's surface, we built them deep. We shut down every power source, every reactor, every generator, every light. We descended into absolute darkness and sealed ourselves in. Perhaps we thought in the darkness it cannot find us. Perhaps without light, without power, without technology, it will leave us alone. We were wrong. The darkness made it stronger. Or perhaps we could simply see it better in the dark. The presence doesn't need light to exist. It doesn't need technology. It doesn't need anything except space to exist in. And we gave it that when we opened the doorway. This transmission is automated. It will continue broadcasting until the power fails, which our calculations suggest will be several thousand years from now. The reactor powering this transmitter is isolated, sealed, designed to run without intervention. If you receive this message, you have achieved advanced civilization. You have technology sophisticated enough to detect our ruins and decode our language. You are approaching the same threshold we approached. Do not attempt underlying field extraction. Do not try to access energy from outside your dimensional framework. Do not follow the path we followed. We opened a door. It cannot be closed. The presence is in our reality now, and it will never leave. By the time you receive this, we will be dead. All of us, every member of our species, we chose extinction over existence with the presence. If you face the same choice, we pray you choose differently. We pray you never have to make that choice at all. Learn from our mistake. Some doors should remain closed. Some knowledge should remain unknown. Some power is not worth the price. The presence is listening. The presence is always listening. It waits in the space between spaces. And when you reach for the power we reached for, it will notice you too. Do not reach. Do not touch. Do not open the door. The message ended with a final line. It is in the matter itself now. It is in everything. It is listening. Then silence. We sat in that conference room for at least an hour without speaking. The implications of what we just heard were too vast to process immediately. A civilization thousands of years more advanced than ours with technology we could barely imagine had been destroyed by something they'd accidentally unleashed. Something they called the presence. Something that had crossed over from another dimension through their experimental reactor. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. This is insane. They're describing something that violates every physical law we understand. This has to be some kind of mass delusion, a civilization-wide psychotic break. 40 billion people don't have identical delusions, Raymond said quietly, not simultaneously, not with that level of detail and consistency. Then what are you suggesting? That there's some kind of interdimensional entity that can cross into our reality through fusion reactors. That's not science. That's horror fiction. I'm not suggesting anything, Raymond said. I'm just telling you what they reported and they were there. We weren't. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Baltimore spread out below us, alive with lights. Millions of homes, offices, street lights, all powered by electricity flowing through an interconnected grid. My mind kept returning to one line from the message. The presence spread through our networks. Every system connected to the fusion grid became compromised. We need to verify this. I said we need to figure out what actually happened to them. Independent evidence, not just their message. How? Elena asked. They're 1,200 light years away. We can't exactly go there and investigate. No, but we can analyze what remains, look for evidence of what they described. The timeline they gave us, we can cross-reference it with the physical evidence. So we did. We spent the next month conducting the most detailed analysis possible of the Kepler-442 system. We mapped to every piece of debris, analyzed every structure, reconstructed the timeline of collapse down to the day. Everything matched the message. The Dyson swarm had been deliberately destroyed in a coordinated demolition. The habitat rings had been depressurized from the inside. The escape vessels had launched chaotically and failed. The planet's surface showed evidence of frantic underground construction followed by total abandonment. The timeline even matched based on our analysis of structural degradation and atmospheric composition. We estimated that the Kellen civilization had collapsed in a period of less than 3 months from the initial reactor experiment to total extinction. 3 months for an entire civilization to fall. They're telling the truth, Raymond said. At least they're telling what they believed was the truth. Whether the presence was real or a mass delusion, they genuinely believed it was real. They destroyed their entire civilization trying to stop it. Administrator Rodriguez called us in for a review at the end of April. Our 6-month deadline was approaching, and he wanted to know what we'd found. We presented everything. The Dyson swarm, the habitat rings, the message, the timeline, all of it. He listened without interrupting. When we finished, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long time. This message, he finally said, "You're absolutely certain of the translation." As certain as we can be, Alex confirmed. I've verified it multiple times using different approaches. The translation is accurate, and your recommendation. We all looked at each other. Finally, I spoke. Sir, we recommend warning the fusion research community, not about interdimensional entities or the presence. We don't need to sound like conspiracy theorists, but we should advise caution with experimental reactor designs, suggest additional safety protocols, recommend against any attempts to access exotic energy sources until we better understand the Kellen collapse. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I'll consider it. In the meantime, this project is being classified at the highest level. Nothing about the Kellen message leaves this room. The official story is that we discovered evidence of an extinct civilization. No mention of how they died. No mention of the warning. Understood. But sir, Elena protested, if there's even a chance they're right, if there's something dangerous about advanced fusion technology, then the appropriate authorities will be notified through proper channels. But we're not going to cause a panic over an alien message that might describe nothing more than mass hysteria. Are we clear? We all nodded reluctantly. Good. The project is officially concluded. You've done excellent work. Take some time off, all of you. We filed out of his office, and I felt a deep sense of unease. We just uncovered evidence of the most catastrophic technological disaster in the history of the universe, and we were going to bury it under classification. But I did what I was told. I wrote up my comprehensive report, all 573 pages of it, and submitted it through proper channels. I sent specific warnings to the major fusion research facilities, carefully worded to avoid sounding alarmist. And then I tried to get on with my life. That's when the technical problems started. At first, it was minor. My laptop would occasionally freeze when I was working on Kepler-442 related files. Nothing major, just annoying glitches. I figured it was stress on the system from all the data analysis we've been doing. Then it got worse. 4 weeks after we'd concluded the project, my laptop completely died. I was reviewing some of the translated message text when the screen went black. Not a normal shutdown, just instant black. The computer wouldn't restart, wouldn't even show the boot screen. I took it to it. The technician who looked at it called me back an hour later. Dr. Cross. I've never seen a failure like this. Your solid-state drive has been completely corrupted, every single sector. It's like something went through and systematically destroyed every bit of data. Can you recover anything? No, it's total corruption. I'm sorry, I bought a new laptop. I restored my backed-up files from the secure server. 3 days later, the same thing happened. Total drive corruption, instant and complete. I started keeping all the Kepler-442 data on the secure server, only accessing it through terminal sessions, but other devices started failing too. My phone would crash whenever I tried to view certain encrypted files. The crashes were hard crashes, the kind that required complete factory resets. I went through 4 phones in 2 months. My car's computer system failed while I was driving home. One night, every screen in the dashboard lit up with random characters, symbols that looked almost like language but weren't any script I recognized. The steering locked up. I had to coast to the shoulder while the entire electrical system went haywire. The tow truck driver who came to get me looked at the onboard computer and whistled. "I've never seen anything like this." He said, "Your whole computer module is fried." And I mean completely fried. It's like something overloaded it from the inside. Can it be fixed? You'll need to replace the entire module. And honestly, I check your alternator and battery too. Whatever did, this might have damaged other electrical components. I had the car towed to the dealership. They replaced the computer module, the alternator, and half the electrical system. Cost me $3,000. The service manager couldn't explain what had caused the failure. "It's like your car was hit by an electromagnetic pulse," he said, "but there's no source for that. No nearby lightning strikes, no power surges in the area. It just failed." Elena started having similar problems. She called me one morning, her voice shaking. "Ben, something's wrong with my lab equipment. The spectrometers are giving impossible readings, wavelengths that don't exist. The cameras are capturing interference in every image. Dark spots that move between frames. Maybe the sensors are failing." I replaced all the sensors. Got new equipment from 3 different manufacturers. Same problem. And Ben, I did frame-by-frame analysis on the camera footage. The interference doesn't just move randomly. It has patterns. It's like something is moving through the images, deliberately staying out of focus. "You're stressed, Elena. We all are. Maybe you should take some time off." "I know what I'm seeing, Ben." The James Webb Space Telescope started experiencing malfunctions too. 7 major sensor failures in 8 months, and every single one occurred during observations of the Kepler-442 system. The engineering team couldn't explain it. "We've run full diagnostics. One of the engineers told me the telescope is functioning perfectly, but when we point it at that specific system, something interferes with the sensors. We're getting corrupted data, impossible readings, random failures. Could it be natural interference? Cosmic rays? Cosmic rays don't target specific observations. They're random. This is targeted. It's like something doesn't want us looking at that system." I didn't like the implications of that statement. Raymond stopped coming to the institute. When I called him, he sounded distant, almost drugged. "I'm not sleeping," he admitted. "Every time I closed my eyes, I see movement, shadows in the darkness. And I know it's probably just stress, just my mind playing tricks after months of thinking about the Kell run." "But Ben, but what?" There was a long pause. "It's exactly what they described. Movement in my peripheral vision, something I can only see when I'm not looking directly at it, and I know that's just how peripheral vision works. I know the human eye plays tricks in low light, but it feels deliberate. It feels like something is watching me." "Raymond, you need to take a break, get some rest, maybe talk to someone." I requested a transfer. "I'm leaving the Kepler-442 project permanently." "Raymond, don't try to talk me out of this. I'm done. I can't do this anymore." He hung up. Lisa left even more abruptly. I came into the institute one Monday morning and her office was empty, completely cleared out. Her assistant told me she'd left Friday afternoon without explanation. She seemed in a hurry. The assistant said, packed up her entire office in about an hour and left. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. I tried calling her straight to voicemail. I sent emails, no response. I finally contacted HR and found out she'd taken a position at a remote research station in Alaska. Field work studying ice core samples, manual instruments only, no computers, no networks, no satellite uplink. She had completely disconnected. I started having dreams. Not nightmares exactly, but disturbing dreams where I was standing in conference room 7 staring at the display screen. The screen would be showing static, but in the static I could see shapes, patterns, almost like something was trying to form in the noise, trying to communicate, but couldn't quite break through. In the dreams, I would lean closer to the screen, trying to make out what I was seeing. And just as the shapes were about to resolve into something recognizable, I would wake up, always at that exact moment, always with my heart pounding and a feeling of dread that I couldn't explain. The dreams became more frequent, more vivid. I started dreading sleep. Alex called me at 2:00 in the morning on a Wednesday in early June. I was lying in bed, unable to sleep as usual, so I answered immediately. Ben, his voice was barely a whisper. I need to tell you something about the message. What about it? The last part, the section that cuts off mid-sentence. I thought it was corrupted data, damage from age and radiation, but I kept working on it. I couldn't let it go. I spent 3 months trying to reconstruct that last fragment, and I succeeded. I recovered one more word. One more complete word came through clearly. What word? There was a long pause. I could hear Alex say, breathing fast and shallow, almost panicked. Listening, he finally said the last word is listening. The complete sentence is it is in the matter itself now. It is listening. I felt cold spread through my entire body. Listening to what? I don't know. But Ben, there's something else. Something I should have noticed before. The message isn't just a recording. It's being actively maintained. The signal strength varies based on how much we're observing the system. When we point at Kepler 442, the signal gets stronger. When we observe other systems, it gets weaker. That's impossible. The message is 2,100 years old. It's automated. That's what I thought too, but I've been monitoring it. The variations are too precise to be random. The signal is responsive. It's reacting to us. What are you saying? I'm saying the message isn't just a warning, Ben. I think it's bait. I think whatever killed the Kellen is using their ruins to attract other civilizations. And when we get close enough, when we decode the message and understand what they were doing, it knows where we are. I finished. Yes, it knows where we are. He hung up. I sat in my dark bedroom for hours, staring at nothing. My mind was racing, making connections I didn't want to make. The Kellan had reached for power from outside their dimension. They touched something they called the presence. It had crossed over into their reality and destroyed them. And now we decoded their message. We learned what they did. We'd learned how they opened the door. Did that mean we'd opened it too? Just by understanding, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The signal has been received. The door is opening. We are coming through. I stared at it. Wrong number. Had to be some spam text or another text. You heard the warning. You decoded the message. You know what we found, and now it knows you know. I deleted the text, blocked the number, threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and the screen shattered, but I didn't care. I couldn't have that thing near me. Couldn't have it connected to the network that might be carrying something I didn't want to think about. I got out of bed, got dressed, and left my apartment. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. It was 3:00 in the morning, and Baltimore was mostly empty. Street lights cast long shadows. My footsteps echoed on the pavement. Behind me, I heard a second set of footsteps, always just slightly out of sync with mine. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned around, empty street, nothing there. I started walking again. The footsteps resumed. I walked faster. So did the footsteps. I broke into a run. I ran for 6 blocks before I stopped, gasping, leaning against a building. The footsteps had stopped too. But I could feel something, a presence. The word echoed in my mind. Presence, always there, even when you couldn't see it. I looked around frantically. Nothing, just empty streets and shadows in the distant hum of the city. But in my peripheral vision, just at the edge of my sight, I saw something move. I turned towards it. Nothing there. I looked away. There it was again, movement, a shape, something that existed only when I wasn't looking at it directly. I ran again back to my apartment, up the stairs, fumbling with my keys, slamming the door behind me and locking every lock. I stood there in my dark living room, breathing hard, telling myself I was being ridiculous. It was stress, paranoia. Weeks of thinking about the Kellan had infected my mind, made me see patterns where there were none. But when I turned on the lights, every electronic device in my apartment was on. The TV was displaying static. The laptop screen glowed, even though I knew I'd shut it down. The microwave clock was flashing random numbers. Even my unplugged alarm clock radio was somehow emitting white noise. I backed toward the door slowly. I didn't touch any of the devices. I just left, closing the door quietly behind me. I spent the rest of the night in my car in a grocery store parking lot. When sunrise came, I made a decision. I called the property manager and broke my lease, paid the penalty without arguing, packed a single bag of essentials and left everything else in that apartment. Everything electronic, everything connected to the network that now felt like it was carrying something malevolent. By evening, I was on a plane to Vancouver. By the next morning, I was on a smaller plane heading to a research station in northern Canada. The station was perfect. 4 researchers, no internet, no cell service, just shortwave radio for emergencies and manual instruments for atmospheric research. For 3 weeks, I felt normal again. The technical glitches stopped. The dreams stopped. The feeling of being watched faded. I started to think maybe it really had been stress and paranoia, that I'd had some kind of breakdown from the intensity of the Kepler 442 project. Then Dr. Sarah Kamura came to me with a puzzled expression. Sarah was one of the other researchers at the station, a geophysicist who specialized in studying Earth's magnetic field. "Ben, can you look at something?" she asked, leading me to the magnetometer. The instrument showed regular repeating spikes in the magnetic field, too regular to be natural variation. "That's a signal," I said slowly. "That's what I thought. Electromagnetic, but I can't identify the source. It's not satellites. We are too far north for most orbital paths. It's not ground-based transmitters. We'd see a clear directional source. It's coming from above us, but not from orbit, from much further away." "How much further?" She showed me her calculations. "If I'm reading this correctly, the signal is coming from outside our solar system, from the direction of the constellation Lyra." My blood went cold. "LOA, you're sure?" "I've triple-checked. The signal is coming from approximately 1,200 light-years away from the Kepler 442 region. And Ben, it's not random. Look at the pattern." She pulled up a graph showing the signal variations over time. They formed a clear repeating pattern. Not any language I recognized, but definitely structured, intentional. "It's trying to communicate," Sarah said. I walked outside. The sky was clear, the stars impossibly bright with no light pollution. I looked up toward Lyra, toward Kepler 442, toward the graveyard where the Kelron had died 2,100 years ago. One of the stars flickered, not the random twinkle of atmospheric distortion, a deliberate pattern, 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short SOS, or a countdown. "It's probably a pulsar," I told Sarah when I went back inside. Some natural astronomical phenomenon were picking up. She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. That night I lay in my bunk, unable to sleep. Around midnight, the shortwave radio crackled to life. We kept it tuned to the emergency frequency, and it had been silent for weeks. But now it was picking up something. A voice distorted by distance and interference, but still audible, still listening, still watching. "The door is open now. We're coming through." I got up and checked the radio. The power switch was in the off position. The power cord wasn't even plugged in. But the speaker continued to emit that voice, that message impossibly. "You cannot hide. You cannot run. We are in the electrons. We are in the light. We are in everything that carries power." I grabbed the radio and carried it outside. I found a rock and smashed the radio apart. Plastic cracked. Circuits broke. The speaker shattered into pieces. In the wreckage, I saw something that flowed from one fragment to another like liquid electricity, something that shouldn't exist but did. I'm writing this by hand now. Old-fashioned pen and paper, the way people communicated before computers, before networks, before we built electronic highways for something to travel on. Tomorrow, I'm leaving the research station. I'm going deeper into the wilderness somewhere with no electricity at all. No connection to the grid that covers our planet like a web. But I don't think it's going to matter because I finally understand what killed the Kellan. They reached into a layer of reality we're not meant to touch. They opened a door and something on the other side accepted the invitation. Something that learned to travel through technology, through electricity, through the networks we've built. They tried to stop it. They destroyed their Dyson swarm, killed themselves, went dark and silent, and it didn't matter. It had already learned to exist in their dimension. And now it's here in our dimension because we decoded the message, because we learned what the Kellan did, because we understood how they opened the door. Understanding was the invitation. Knowledge was the key. 2,000 years that message has been broadcasting. 2,000 years waiting for someone advanced enough to decode it, to understand, to make the connection. We made the connection. The message wasn't a warning, it was bait. A trap designed to lure civilizations that are approaching the same technological threshold the Kellan reached. And when we get close enough, when we understand what they did, the door opens. I think about our fusion research, about how close we're getting to sustained reactions, about how the next logical step is vacuum energy extraction, tapping into the underlying field. The same thing the Kellan did. We're following their path exactly, and the presence, or whatever it is, knows we're coming. It's been waiting for us. Maybe it's been waiting for thousands of civilizations, using the Kellan ruins as a lure. How many other dead civilizations are out there? Their ruins broadcasting warnings that are actually traps. The lights in the research station are flickering now. All of them in sequence like a wave moving through the building. The pattern is deliberate, intelligent. I need to go. I need to get away from anything electronic, anything connected. Maybe if I can get far enough from the grid, from the networks, from anything that carries current. But even as I write this, the pen feels wrong in my hand, like something is flowing through the graphite, like even this simple tool isn't safe anymore. I'm running out of time. If you're reading this, if you find this document, listen. Don't go to Kepler 442. Don't decode the message. Don't try to understand what the Kellan did. And when we achieve fusion energy, when scientists start talking about vacuum energy extraction and tapping into the underlying field, remember the Kellan. Remember what happened when they reached too far. Some doors should stay closed. Some knowledge should remain unknown. Some power isn't worth the price, but we won't stop. I know we won't because that's what we do. We reach, we push, we demand more energy, more power, more understanding. It's in our nature. And something is waiting for us to reach just a little further. The paper shocked me just now. Static electricity, probably, but it happened again and again. Even the paper isn't safe. I'm leaving this document at the research station. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe it will matter. Maybe not. I'm going into the wilderness, into the cold, away from everything. I don't know if I'll make it. I don't know if distance matters anymore. If the presence can exist in matter itself, then there's nowhere to run. But I have to try. The lights just went out. All of them, the entire station is dark, but I can still see because something is glowing. The walls, the floor, everything electronic, glowing with a faint blue light that shouldn't be there. And in that glow, I see shapes moving, forming. Something that's been waiting in the electrons, waiting in the signals, waiting in the network. It's here. It's been here all along. We just didn't have the technology to see it until now. The Kellan were right. It doesn't need a door anymore. It's learned to exist in our reality, in the matter itself, in the atoms that make up everything around us. I was wrong about one thing, though. It didn't come here because we decoded the message. It came here because we broadcast into space for 90 years. Because we announced our presence with radio and television and satellites. Because we built a technological civilization that shines like a beacon across the stars. The message was a warning. After all, a genuine warning. But we received it too late. We've already been noticed. We've already opened the door. And now, like the Kellen, we'll have to decide. Do we shut down our entire civilization to try to stop it? Do we destroy our power grid, kill our networks, return to the Dark Ages, or do we accept that we've crossed the threshold we can't step back from? I think I know what we'll choose because we're human. We don't give up our technology. We don't go backward. We always push forward. Consequences be damned. The Kellan made the same choice. They kept pushing until it was too late. And now their ruins orbit a dead star, broadcasting a warning that's also a trap, luring every civilization that follows their path into the same fate. We are next, unless we do something they didn't. Unless we find a way to close the door they opened to send the presence back to wherever it came from. But I don't think that's possible. I don't think you can put this back in the box. The shapes in the glowing walls are getting clearer, more defined, like something is learning to take form in our reality, learning to be visible instead of always existing just outside perception. I think the Kellans spent their last days watching this same process, watching the presence become more real, more solid, more undeniable until they couldn't pretend anymore, until they had to accept what they'd done. I'm leaving now. I'm going out into the snow, into the wilderness, as far from the grid as I can get. I don't expect to survive, but maybe someone will find this. Maybe it will help. Maybe the next civilization that receives the Kellam message will be smarter than we were. Maybe they'll turn off their telescopes, stop their research, step back from the threshold. Maybe they'll choose to stay in the dark where it's safe. Or maybe they'll do what we did, what the Kellan did, what every curious, ambitious, technology-building species probably does. Maybe they'll reach too far. And if they do, the presence will be waiting. It's always waiting, it's always listening, and it never forgets.